Hey everyone, we're back and we're talking about the Middle Ages. And I thought I'd just stop and have some fun with the plague because, fun with the plague. Um, the plague was a situation where you had sores. Now, this is a picture of of someone who might have looked like they have what would have seen as the plague, but this is just all makeup, just so you know, that's not real. Um, Now, the first symptom of the Black Plague was this ring of small red spots, usually on the arms, and in the nursery rhyme, "Ring around the roses." This was entirely about the plague. Ring around the roses, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all burn down. We all fall down. So this was the so the ring of roses is the plague itself. Pocket full of posies comes from the fact that back in the late 1600s, they believed that bad smells caused the plague. So if they carried around sweet-smelling flowers, they would just pack them into their pockets. That would ward off the plague. Obviously, um, not really a good medical strategy. And then achu achu, which is the original term, ashes ashes, um, is we say ashes ashes, but it was kind of more of a sneeze. It was the sneezing, which was another symptom of the plague, and all fall down. So it's cute to see little kids do it, but it's actually acting out the stages of the plague where people die. So um, so that's a really interesting um, part of that old saying. So now I want to move into the Reformation. Okay, so the Reformation, the split of the Protestant churches from the what was the Catholic Church. So a couple things that were going on at that time that I want to kind of talk about here is first of all the church tax. What would happen would be in those days, if a church wanted to, in Austria or something like that, wanted to build a church, they would have to raise the amount of money it would cost for the church they would want to build. And if it was bigger, there would have to be more money. And then give that amount in tax to Rome. And then they could start to build their church after they raised a duplicate amount for that church. So you had to raise twice the amount of money to get the money that you wanted for your church. That doesn't seem exactly fair. I totally agree with that. That it's not fair. Another thing that was happening were these things called indulgences. So you would have these itinerant monks wandering around offering peoples for prayer. So one of the concepts that was around at the time of the Middle Ages was this notion of purgatory, which is still around today. Purgatory is this process by which a person who dies cleanses themselves so that they are worthy to enter heaven. Now, in back in the day, it was seen as kind of more of a like a train station. I could maybe use the analogy. So you would go to purgatory and you would sit there like a detention or something like that, and you got a ticket, right? And you had a ticket for the yellow train, and you looked up on the board, and your train to heaven might come in 10,000 years, and so you had to wait there. Now, if people prayed for you either before you died or after you died, or your prayers for yourself, so you prayed them through your life, they would maybe bump you up from the yellow train for 10,000 years to maybe the green train of 5,000 years that you had to wait there before going to heaven, or or um, or the blue train, which was only 1,000 years, right, or 10 years, whatever. And so, what in each prayer that you prayed, each blessing that you got had a certain time value to it. And so that if you acquired enough of these prayers, you could then kind of buy your way or get your way out of purgatory and to a faster train. Hopefully that makes sense and not totally crazy. But so here's what was happening. You'd have these monks wandering around offering prayers for people. No problem there, right? but they would ask for support for them when they prayed. So, like, if I'm a monk wandering around from town to town, I would say, I would love to say prayers for you. Is there any way you could help me out as I'm wandering through the towns? And people would say, oh, okay, here, and they'd give like $10. So these monks would have these prayer books, and each of the prayers had some kind of time value to them. So you'd say like an Our Father, and that might be like a week or something like that. But in the back of the book, I've got these really special prayers that only I could pray that could get you off of 10 years of purgatory, right? And so the more that you gave me, the further back in the book I'll go and give you better prayers. So what happened was rich people, they were able to buy their way to accumulate all this time from purgatory, and they felt like they were, sitting pretty. Where poor people who would give a couple pennies, might get a Hail Mary or an Our Father here or there, but they felt doomed in the sense that they weren't going to be able to, get out of purgatory in a long time. So the rich felt safer, while the poor felt unsupported, and they felt like they were damned. So this was bad. First of all, it's bad theology, and second of all, didn't make people hopeful, and so therefore it needed to go. So in the way that it was understood then. So now you have come to this person, Martin Luther. He was a Catholic priest. He was kind of eccentric. He's from Germany, and he looked at all these offenses, this church tax and the indulgence, and any number of different other things that he saw as problem. And he said, and he went to his bishop and he wrote them all down. And he said, here's what I think we really need to change. And the bishop blew him off, right? And so he said, enough of this. After trying again and again to get people to listen to him, he took his objections, these 95 theses, famous 95 theses, and he nails them to the door of the cathedral. And he's there, let everybody read them. And so people were like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, because most of those abuses were being done to the common people. And um, and so he decided, okay, I've got to, people were rallying around him and wanted to hear more from him. And they're like, you need to send him to Rome. And so Luther said, like, well, maybe if I send him to Rome, people, the people in Rome will listen to me. So now here I want to kind of take a break from that for a minute and go to the German princes. We said already that the popes and the bishops had complete control in Europe. And you have these kind of secular leaders, these kings and princes that were in charge of the land, but they had no real power because the pope and the bishops could just supersede whatever they said. And so there's no way to wrestle the control that the pope and the bishops had from the people, because the people believed that if the pope just said anathema, or basically you're going to hell, then that was it. And so that was the ultimate power. And so they were terribly afraid. And so these German princes said, like, how can we do this? And they saw Martin Luther as a perfect example of what they could do um, to get power back. So they said to Luther, hey, we really like to hear, as part of their plan, we'd like to hear what you have to say. Could you please come and preach in the castle? And we can send all this stuff to Rome for you. And Luther's like, okay, cool, great. People are actually listening to me. And we will follow what the German princes had in store for all this in our next video.